Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of How Can You Be So Obtuse? A podcast by me, your humble host, Blair Davis. Let's get right into it. I'm sure the same things that are pissing you off are pissing me off this week. And I think we'll start with the COVID lie, the COVID hoax, the COVID misdirection, the COVID dragging of the feet, because it looks like the WHO has backtracked again on one of their recommendations and one of their claims. This claim being, and this came out on Monday, that asymptomatic people are not the super spreaders that the WHO originally claimed that they would be. Almost everything the WHO has claimed has been wrong. And we have to take whatever the WHO says with a grain of salt because they are in the back pocket of the Chinese. And if you don't believe me, go to The Guardian. The Guardian is not exactly a bastion of conservative ideas. It is a very left-leaning media source. But go check it out. Because on June 9th, they published a story that said that China may have known about the coronavirus in August of 2019. I mean, this is, for the lack of a better term, a bombshell. The Wall Street Journal also published a story around the same time, I believe it was June 10th, about China having known about this virus 2 or 3 months before they claimed to have known about it. And 3 or 4 months before the WHO labeled it a global pandemic. And so what the Wall Street Journal had done and The Guardian had done some research. They compared satellite photos from 2018 to 2019 of major hospitals in the Wuhan area. And they found that in 2019, the hospitals were full of cars, which means the hospitals were full of Chinese patients, which means Chinese patients were suffering from coronavirus all the way back in August of 2019. They also used and searched and researched the Chinese equivalent of Google and found that there were vast numbers of Chinese citizens researching the terms diarrhea, upper respiratory infection, dry cough, high fever, etc., etc. There's a list of about a dozen words that are associated with the coronavirus and symptoms of the coronavirus that the Wall Street Journal and The Guardian found prevalently on this Chinese search engine. What does this mean? Well, what it means is that the Chinese lied to us, which is what we have all known the whole time. The Democrats have denied it. The media has denied it. But I think you and I and the conservatives and the people on the right have known it the whole time. China is not our friend. Not only did China lie about this virus, not only did China lie about its communicability, not only did China lie about its lethality, but China lied to the whole world and let them get infected. China shut down domestic travel out of Wuhan. They shut it down. Rail yards, bus terminals, airports, nobody was getting in or out of Wuhan, China, except if they were flying internationally, except if they were traveling internationally. The Chinese allowed this virus to escape and lied to the entire world about it. Research what's going on right now in China. At one of the world's largest open air markets, apparently a market that serves about 10,000 people, they found somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 new infections. This is outrageous conduct by China. Let's get one thing clear. They let the virus escape their country and then sold us the means to fight it. They infected us and then sold us PPE, defective masks, substandard gloves, and gowns. When are we going to wake up? They threatened not to sell us the antibiotics that we so desperately needed during this whole outbreak because China manufactures about 90% of the antibiotics sold in America. If this doesn't scare the shit out of you, I don't know what will. China has stolen our intellectual property. China has stolen jobs from this country. China manufactures almost everything we need, and in a dire emergency, threatened to withhold it from us. China is not our friend. China is not our friend, and neither are these woke Hollywood leftist elites. Because you know where I'm going with this. The George Floyd lie. These looters, these rioters, these people that have been destroying democratic cities, that have been destroying private property, all under the name of protest, is absolute BS. And you can tell it's BS because the Hollywood leftist elites are bailing them out of jail. They're raising millions and millions of dollars to bail these animals out of jail. Are these celebrities donating money to the businesses that were burnt to the ground? Of course not. Do you hear them giving George's restaurant any money at all? Of course not. Because it doesn't fit with their political ideology. It does not fit with their end goal. And the end goal is to change the government, to change the leadership that is in charge of this government as we speak, and to do it by any means necessary. Be that a fake coronavirus hoax or a fake racism hoax. Because you can go to the Uniform Crime Report, the UCR. It is a crime report that uses information from the Department of Justice and the FBI. And I looked at it. I researched it. The 2019 UCR reported that there were 6,000 blacks killed last year. 5,910 of those were black on black crime. So I ask you, where is the institutional racism? You can also go to the National Academy of Sciences and find a report that says the same thing. Go to my Facebook page, How Can You Be So Obtuse, on Facebook. There's the front page of the report ready for you to read. Don't listen to what they're saying. They're absolutely trying to distract you. They're absolutely blowing smoke in your face on purpose. The left wants us divided. The left needs us divided because a divided populace, a divided public is easier to scare. If we're terrified of each other, if we're terrified of the invisible boogeyman that is racism, then we can't keep an eye on what they're doing. We can't keep an eye on how many executive orders Gavin Newsom has signed to try to change the fundamental function of our elections. It's incredible to me. And I think we can kind of compare the two because the COVID lie was specifically designed to distract our attention from the November election. And you can tell because the goalposts kept moving. At first, the claim was stay home to prevent the overwhelming of the hospital system. Well, except for New York and New Jersey, that never happened. But did they lift the stay-at-home order? Of course not. Because they wanted to control us. They wanted to see how far they could push us. They shut down the country to see how long they could get away with it. And the stay-at-home order, if you remember, was supposed to last for 2 weeks. We're going on our third month of all of this nonsense. California still has a stay-at-home order in effect. It hasn't been lifted. Some counties are requiring masks be worn outside, even though the WHO has changed their tune on masks 5 times. If you don't believe me, go research it. 5 times. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. A mask works, a mask doesn't work. It has to be an N95, you can use a cloth mask. And let me tell you what, if a cloth mask worked, then doctors and nurses would be wearing them in the ICU. If cloth masks worked, then doctors and nurses wouldn't have been complaining about a shortage of PPE. And if a cloth mask doesn't work, then why are we being told to wear them? And if it does work, why do we have to socially distance? And if social distance works, then why are we wearing masks? And if both of them work, why are we staying at home? These are ridiculous, nonsensical requirements imposed on the American public to shut us down, to shut us up. Don't let it happen. The third lie in the COVID scheme was stay at home to slow the spread. Because they knew that the numbers weren't matching their claims. As soon as they knew that the hospitals weren't being overcrowded, then they came out with the 2-week order. The 2-week order expired, and then they said, well, we have to stay at home to slow the spread. It doesn't slow the spread. Staying at home, the lockdown order didn't slow anything. It delayed it. That's it. And then their next claim was to stop the spread. And of course, it's not going to stop anything. Staying at home doesn't stop anything. As a matter of fact, it makes things worse. We already know that. There's 1,000 different studies that prove that. And if you don't believe it, look at nursing homes. Those people didn't leave, couldn't leave, and they're dying in the dozens. After that, the new pursuit was stay at home until we develop a vaccine. Well, they know already going into that statement that vaccines take years, sometimes decades to develop, and sometimes are never developed. We have a vaccine for the flu as we speak, and it's only 50% effective. So are we supposed to stay home until a partially effective vaccine for coronavirus is developed? It's ridiculous. And the only reason that they have listed these stay-at-home orders is because the numbers aren't matching the claims. They have lied to us over and over again, and they continue to. The last and the most feeble attempt at the stay-at-home orders were stay at home until we develop a cure. A cure? We don't have a cure for the common cold. We've been working on a cure for AIDS for 35 years. So they knew that as soon as they lobbed that one out, that somebody was going to get wise to their BS. If you notice, it's this communal approach. They keep telling us we're all in this together. We have to watch each other's backs while they violate their own rules, while they go on vacation, while they travel outside of the state, while they use planes, while they go to other states with their families. They're not minding their own requirements. And we're not all of this together. No way. And you can tell that this lie has been now shifted to the George Floyd situation. And don't get me wrong, I don't want anybody to get their panties in a bunch. George Floyd dying was wrong. Absolutely wrong. And we haven't seen the whole video. I haven't seen the whole video, so I'm not going to jump to any conclusions about who's guilty and who isn't. That's what we have courts for. We can't go storming through the streets, lighting businesses on fire, looting, pillaging, and killing people simply because we think we know what happened. A lot of that stuff happened in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, and there were white mobs dragging black people out of jails. They were called lynch mobs. This is a modern-day version of a lynch mob. And that being said, what was the primary message being broadcast after the George Floyd death? What was it? Police brutality. Here we go, another example of police brutality. And that police brutality morphed into racism. He was a racist cop, even though the 4 cops there, white, Hispanic, Asian, and black, were all there. But who gets singled out? The white cop. Because the white cop fits the left's narrative of racist cops running the streets and slaughtering black people, which is inaccurate. Wholly, totally, completely inaccurate. And then, of course, racism morphs into systemic racism, right? Because it can't just be one racist cop. Even if that cop isn't racist, let's just say for the sake of argument, he's racist. It can't be one individually racist cop. It has to be the whole system. It's systemic racism. Even though they don't want to categorize whites, blacks, or Hispanics as one group. I mean, well, I guess whites, it's okay. It's in vogue now to group white people and stereotype them. But just because one black person commits a crime doesn't mean that all black people are criminals. But the same doesn't apply to cops. And the same doesn't apply to whites. Just because one white cop is racist, it does not mean that all white cops are racist. And it certainly doesn't mean that all cops are racist. The LAPD, for example, is 50% Hispanic. It's only 30% white. And then systemic racism, of course, begat institutional racism. It's not good enough that the police system is racist or the justice system is racist. Now everything is racist, right? That's the story, because they're trying to tear down what has worked in this country for over 200 years. They're trying to shit can the most successful, the most caring, the most productive, the most giving government that the world has ever known. Nobody has done more with the power that we possess and hurt less people than the United States of America. Go back through history, you can research it yourself. And of course, institutional racism, what's produced out of institutional racism? What is the good of propagating the story of institutional racism? Well, you develop white guilt. And the only people feeling guilt, no, not the only people, but the majority of the people feeling quote unquote guilty for being white is millennials, 30 or under. Look at who's running through the streets of Minneapolis and Chicago. Look who's running through the streets of South Carolina. Look who's running through all these streets of Philadelphia. They're millennials. Backpacks and skateboards. People with no jobs. People not going to school. People who've been on lockdown for 3 months, and you push them to the edge of poverty and you light the fuse, and this is what you get. But the left doesn't care about that. The left cares about power and gaining power through any means necessary. They want to totally tear down 170 years of a police system that has worked, that has been copied throughout this world. A system that assumes you are innocent until proven guilty. That has been adopted by almost every Western developed nation in the world. Our judicial system. Our system of policing. Now, it's my opinion that if you don't run afoul of the law, then you don't run the chance of being killed by a cop. Don't break the law, don't meet a cop. It's pretty simple to me. But again, I can't help but notice every time we hear this, it's we all have to help. We all have to change. It's another communal response. It's this socialist bubble, this oneness of the whole community. And it's just not true. That's not what America was founded on. America was founded on individual freedoms, independence, the freedom to make your own choice. And if you'll notice right now, the most dangerous thing you can have is an independent thought. Ask Drew Brees. If you buck the system, if you swim against the tide, if you disagree with Black Lives Matter, God help you. Because this is fast becoming not the United States of America. It's fast becoming George Orwell's 1984. It's fast becoming North Korea, where you're not allowed to speak in opposition of the populace and what's popular right now. And so we have to make sure that we keep in mind what our end goal is. Like I said last week, it's voting. If you know someone who is registered to vote, you have to urge them. You have to beg them. You have to make sure in November that they are ready to vote. And if you decide to vote Democratic, that's fine. If this person you know decides to vote Democratic, that's fine. But you have to urge them to vote Republican. You have to urge them, in my opinion, to vote the right way, the way of freedom. The Democrats are not friends of minorities, let me tell you. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed by Republicans. The 1986 crime bill was signed into law by the Democrats. One of the worst sweeping, 1996 bill, the worst sweeping law changes in this country's history. Now you hear about mass incarceration and you hear about an unjust justice system. Almost all of that was ushered in by that 1996 crime bill, who, by the way, Joe Biden co-sponsored it. These aren't secrets. Unfortunately, we have had to become, and I say we, us conservatives, we have had to become fact checkers. We watch the news, we listen to the radio, we see what's on the internet, and 9 times out of 10, it's false. How do I know? Because I watch it, I look for it, I read it, I research it. I dare you to find something positive about Donald Trump anywhere. You can't, because it's been censored, it's been hidden, it's been overlooked, whitewashed. And in most cases, just flat out lied about. Again, don't let them distract you. The media keeps blaming Trump for what happened to George Floyd. What happened with the other killings? Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Philando Castile, Mike Brown, all of which were killed by police. But let me tell you the important part. They were all killed under the 8 years that Obama and Biden were in charge. Where's their culpability? Where's their responsibility? Where's their accountability? You can't blame Donald Trump for what's going on in a Minneapolis police department 3,000 miles away from Washington, any more than you can blame Obama or Biden. We have bad actors. And the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, Missouri was investigated by an Obama, a black attorney general, Eric Holder, under the black President Obama's administration, and they found no evidence whatsoever that Michael Brown had his hands up and was screaming, "Don't shoot." As a matter of fact, they found the exact opposite. They found that Michael Brown was an aggressor. They found that Michael Brown was diving into that cop car. They stopped short of calling the shooting justified. You know why? Because they couldn't take more riots. They couldn't tell the truth. That's why you have to know that none of this is about race. None of it. It's not about Black Lives Matter. It's not about institutional racism. It's not about police brutality. It's about fundamentally changing the way this country is governed. It is about fundamentally changing the way the people of this country are controlled and governed. These aren't conspiracy theories. This isn't a secret. This isn't some shadowy manifesto that has been passed around in the dark, in the shadows. All of this information is readily available if you look for it. It's history. It's what's going on right now before our eyes. You know what you can do? How about you do this? How about you donate to Black Lives Matter? Because when you donate to Black Lives Matter, it's going to take you to a website called Act Blue. Act Blue. Look it up. Act Blue is a Democratic website. It's a Democratic donation website. Now, your money doesn't go directly to the Democratic National Committee, but my guess is that a lot of the money finds its way there anyway. Because let me tell you who Act Blue has contributed money to, or who they have helped raise money for, should I say. In 2016, they helped raise money for Hillary Clinton's campaign. In 2020, they helped raise money for Bernie Sanders' campaign. I'm going to give you a wild guess. Whose campaign right now they're helping? Joe Biden. It's no secret. You can find it yourself. And I think that if we are all to continue to try to live as neighbors, that we have to quit knee-jerk reacting to everything we see on TV. As a matter of fact, don't believe anything you see on TV until you research it yourself. ABC, CNN, these are all corporate entities. These are all businesses. Businesses that profit from eyes on the television screen. Businesses that profit from anarchy and chaos, because that means people will be watching to see what happens next. People are scared to see what's happening in their neighborhoods. Don't be sucked in by this. Don't be fooled by these tactics. It is a clear and easy thing to see that the left needs us divided. That's the only way they can steal this election. If we're together, if we're united, and we see what's happening in Washington, if we see how these people are pandering for votes by wearing these African scarves and hats, do you really think for a second that that wasn't planned? Pelosi and Chuck Schumer complain about Donald Trump posing for a photo app with the Bible, and what do? They do an even worse thing. They pose on one knee in support of Black Lives Matter with African scarves on. By the way, from the Ashanti people, from the Ashanti tribe of Africa. Look this up. This is the most ironic thing of it all. The garb they were wearing, the hats and the scarves they were wearing are from the Ashanti tribe in Africa. And what were the Ashanti people famous for? Slavery. The Ashanti tribe in Africa, the Ashanti people were famous and known for kidnapping blacks and selling them to Europeans. Don't take my word for it. I tell you all the time, do your own research. Don't take my word for it. These are stories and this is news that the media will not put on the air. They refuse because the media is the propaganda wing of the Democratic Party. Do not listen. Find your own news and vote. If you know somebody that has the right to vote, urge them to vote. It is so important that we all get out to vote. I just want to leave you as I always do. Don't want it to sound like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, because there is. I have faith in this country. I have faith in the leader of this country. I have faith in Donald Trump. I have faith in my friends. I know that I'm not alone. I have discussions daily with friends, with strangers, with neighbors. We are the silent majority. And if we get out and vote, I guarantee you the rest of these millennials rioting, carrying skateboards and backpacks will not be there in November. They don't have the attention span. Don't be complacent. Remember, this is a participatory democracy. We have to get out. We, not just me, not just you. Every time I come on this podcast, I say we. I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not already doing myself. So remember, we have to get out and vote. Urge everyone you know that is registered to vote to do so. All right? Okay. So take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. And remember, re-strengthen, reinvigorate, recapture, Republican.